Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. Thanks for stopping by and watching a little Bible study I try to do every Sabbath. I want to apologize for how I may sound. Been pretty sick the last couple of days. I think I've got some kind of sinus infection. I've never felt sinus pressure quite like I did yesterday. A little better today, but still not too great. So I apologize for how I may sound. So this week I've been doing some pruning of, trees and some of the fruiting vines that we have around here. I even made a video on it a few days back. And while I was out there doing that, the scripture verse that talks about pruning the vines came to mind. And I think sometimes when we read certain things out of the scripture, we read it and like, oh, okay, that's good, that sounds great. But sometimes when it kind of hits us what it's really talking about, it's like a new door kind of opens. And and not that everyone nowadays does that kind of stuff. Maybe you don't have trees or fruiting vines or something that you would be pruning. So you read that scripture and it may not quite hit you exactly what it's talking about or the full meaning of it. And so I want to read it. It's in John chapter 15 verses 1 through 6. And it's Yeshua saying, I am the true vine. My Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that bears no fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, so that it bears more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Stay in me, and I stay in you. As the branch is unable to bear fruit for itself, unless it stays on the vine, so neither you unless you stay in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. He who stays in me, and I in him, he bears much fruit. Because without me, you are able to do naught. If anyone does not stay in me, he is thrown away as branches and dries up. And they gather them and throw them in the fire, and they are burned. So what he's talking about here is that he's saying that he's the vine, the main trunk of the vine. So you picture an apple tree, a peach tree, or a grapevine, or blackberry bushes, which I was doing those earlier this week, raspberry, different things like that you have to prune back every year. And so he is like the main trunk, the main plant, and we're the branches, parts that branch off. And the Father, Yahweh, is the gardener, and he's going through and he's trimming off those branches. And it says here that the dead branches, the ones that bear no fruit, the ones that aren't doing any good, that he'll just cut those completely off. The ones that bear fruit, he'll sit there and he'll trim and he'll prune and care for. And that if we stay in him, Yeshua, then he will stay in us, and that we will bear more fruit. And so I'm, kind of thinking along the line of actual pruning, the pruning process. And it kind of made me think about how many times, whether they're unbelievers or believers, both, I've heard this, it questioned many times is, if God or Yah is so loving and so powerful and loving, then why do we go through the things that we go through? Why do we have to go through rough times in life? And a lot of atheists will use that as an argument that, well, if your God is so loving and so powerful, then why do even you as believers go through bad times? Well, he's saying right here that he's pruning us. And if you can kind of think on the lines of a plant being pruned, I'm sure if the plant could feel things, it probably wouldn't feel good. If someone came up to me and cut off my arm or cut off my fingers or something, it probably wouldn't feel good. And essentially that's what we're doing. When I'm going through, and I've got my little pruners out here, just to show. So as we're going through and we're pruning the branches, it may not feel good. You know, cutting that part off. This is the sick part. This is the part that's not producing well. This is the part that's holding the rest of the plant back. So we got to cut that off. You know, and if you think about it, the plant, you know, if it could feel, it'd probably think, man, ow, that kind of hurt. You just cut off part of my body. You know, you cut off a branch. And it's the same way with us. You know, we go through tough times sometimes, physically, emotionally, mentally, rough times. And you can look at it that it's Yah that is pruning us. He knows what's ahead. He knows more than we do. And He sees that maybe this area of your life needs to be cut out. This may need to be trimmed back. Maybe you're not as strong in this area. This area has the potential to produce more, has the potential to fruit more, and to bear more fruit. But it needs to kind of be trimmed back, and some of the areas that aren't as strong need to be cut out. And in doing that, at those times of it being cut out, it may be kind of painful for us. It may be a process that we don't enjoy, having those areas cut out of our life. We just have to have faith in Him and trust that He's the gardener. We're just a plant. You know, in my video the other day I showed blackberries, wild blackberries, and the ones I showed the video weren't that bad, though. The ones that we have that are really overgrown, I didn't show just because they were so overgrown. I couldn't get a good spot to set the camera up or anything, because they were just, I don't know if I'll ever get them tamed down. But they get crazy growing. And you know, this one patch I'm speaking of, they're massively huge patch of blackberries. But if you go in there during the season when they're producing, there's really not that many blackberries on them. And it's because they've not been pruned back every year, which they need to be. And so those are ones that I'm slowly getting to. But you can't even get in there to hardly harvest anything. And the harvest isn't that good because they're out of control growing. And we're the same way. If we could just get out of control growing and we, you know, doing our own thing, which is what those blackberries are doing. They're just doing their own thing, growing however they want, going anywhere, which way they want. And they're not bearing a lot of good fruit. And even the fruit that they have, it's so hard to get to that you can't even really get to the fruit. Because it's just such a gnarled, mangled mess of vines. And so it's hard to even see that fruit or get to it because of the mess. So try to think of that in your own life. That when we, you know, try to do our own thing and go our own way and live our own life and make our own decisions, we get out of control and we don't bear as much fruit. And even the fruit that we might bear, it might be hard to see sometimes because it's all covered up by all that worldly, gnarled mess that, you know, we took charge of our life and we decided to do it our way. And it makes it difficult to see that. And, you know, just like the blackberries out there are relying on me to go out there and trim them back and make them a good producing plant, a fruitful plant, we should rely on the Father, because He's the true master gardener, to come in and trim us back and to remove the dead parts, to remove the parts that aren't fruitful, and to trim up certain areas that need to be trimmed. And you know, when you kind of think of it that way, instead of just reading the verse, but when you try to think of it that way, maybe a fruit tree or something, it starts to make a little bit more sense of what He's doing. So when you're going through those times that you feel a little uncomfortable, or things are getting tough, or you don't feel like you like what's going on, maybe it's just Yah that's trimming you back a little bit. He's doing a little pruning work on you, and He's trying to make you a more fruitful person. Alright, thank you for watching, and sorry about my nasally, raspy sound. You guys have a wonderful and blessed Sabbath.